Welcome, Stacey, to the pod. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We'll get straight into it.
Mhm.
I would love to know your journey into compliance.
Okay. I fell into compliance. So I studied business management for accounting in uni. My dad was an accountant. It kind of felt like a natural, progressive thing. And I did some, accounting exams. I love the whole numbers and analysing, not like pure numbers. And then I ended up in one of the big four, working as an analyst there. And then I got poached for a compliance role. And I literally said to her, the recruiter, what is compliance? And she was like, you're doing it. I was just like, am I? And now that I look back, I was, it was more like fraud, AML sort of stuff. But I was doing compliance, but it's not a role that's, I don't know now in schools or like uni if it's actually talked about, but actually no, because I was talking to a young person the other day and they're like, what's compliance? And I had to really spell it out to them. So it's not something we've known. So when she said, oh, I've got a compliance role for you, I said, okay, I'm at one of the big four, like what's this? And so yeah, I went into it. I was a generalist compliance in a broker. I did everything, kind of like complaints, market abuse. I did the whole AML frauds. Like I was on both sides, and I just worked my way and just did different brokers from there.
Nice. And did that lead you deeper into financial regulation in particular, or where did you sort of go from
It's
there?
always been just financial. I guess because I've got that, I guess had the numbers background. I went into a brokerage, so it was always like financial services. I've done nothing different than that.
And what was that like moving from Deloitte, not knowing you were doing compliance, to suddenly being exposed to everything compliance? I assume it was a fast-growing company.
It was daunting. I remember. I still do it now. Like there's a lot of reading to do, and no 2 days are the same. Like it's just from there to there to there, like everywhere.
And what do you enjoy about your day to day? Like what sort of gets you about doing compliance?
It's not the same. Like I get to talk to lawyers, I get to talk to marketing, I get to talk to legal, I get to talk to the sales guys, and I'm learning I don't realise it, but I am learning something new every single day, and yeah, I love that.
Nice. And on the flip side, what would you say are the biggest challenges as part of that?
Okay, so marketing compliance. I think the biggest challenge, I would say, let's go to the regulation. Like it's constantly evolving. It seems like there's a new thing, a new paper, a new consultation out every single week, and just finding the time to digest that, to analyze it, and then translate that to your business and then the different stakeholders. I think that's, looking at the speeds and how businesses works. That's quite a big challenge, but then just the collaborativeness between I do this because it is it is quite difficult, like working with marketing and translating what the regulator is saying to what we need to do can be quite difficult. There can be a lot of pushback. That is the biggest challenge, I think, in working in this marketing compliance domain. But also just I say like regulation involves every single week, but also marketing as well. Like I have no idea what the latest kind of feature on Facebook or Instagram is, but it seems like every couple of weeks there's a new platform or a new feature where we compliance have to we should be adapting those rules for these different things we're using. So it's learning that as well, or understanding that to make sure regulation is proper implemented.
And how do you do that? Because like you say, you've got the regulations on one side that are ever evolving. You're trying to learn what's changing, what's new. But then you've also got the tech side. So you've kind of got like an old industry, let's say, or sort of old rules that become new rules and then go back to the old rules.
Yeah.
And then you've got the tech side of things. So how do you try and be on top of both of those, what are very different arenas?
I personally would, I'm with my marketing teams all the time. I would say, build that rapport, build that relationship, make sure you're in the room. Even if they don't want you in the room, make sure you're in the room and you're picking up the lingo, going back, Googling it, take some marketing courses, learn, and there's loads. There's free ones, there's paid ones, but try and take a course in social media marketing and digital marketing to really understand what your market, like what challenges they're faced with, and and that way you can kind of merge the two.
Nice. What marketing courses have you taken?
So I've taken a couple free ones. I won't name the company, but I've taken a couple free. But I'm actually doing a Google digital marketing course right now, and it's a lot hard. I mean, studying is hard anyway once you leave school, right? But it's a lot harder than I expected it to be. I thought because I've been doing this for years, it will just be like I can listen to it as I'm getting on with other stuff. No, I've got my pen and paper out and I'm writing, and it's cool though because I get to go back to various people in the organization and be like, what's this, or how do we do this, what is attrition, or I can't remember, what does this mean, and that's really cool.
And are there any like equivalent compliance courses that marketing might look to take, for example?
Oh, I wish. I don't think so, and that's a really interesting question, because we deliver all the training, right, as compliance officers. We structure it around our products and services and stuff. I don't think there is, and I want to be proven wrong, I don't think there's an external one, but I would say it's better coming from the people in the organisation that understand, because it's very generic, right? It needs to be tailored to the different teams, the different products and services, and even just like the culture as well of the organisation.
I agree. I mean, we see it like the classic example is clear, fair, and not misleading. What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It varies.
Yeah, and there's marketing have their own brand guidelines. Let's take that and tell you what the kind of the do's and don'ts are based on regulation.
And how do you conduct training? So, like you said, they've got brand guidelines. You've got your interpretations of COBs or whatever it might be. How do you then whip that into a policy that they can follow, they understand, there's a rapport there? What's the process there?
Difficult. It's difficult. I think, how compliance should deliver training is, first of all, understanding your marketing teams, understanding the culture, especially the culture from the top, making sure that any policy and process, is well delivered, and well received, I should say, and then start structuring your training and involve them. I think compliance people read stuff all the time. I would love to listen to training. I would love to see someone's face. So, maybe it's you sitting down like this and delivering the training and, allowing them to go away with that in their ears. Rather than just text all the time.
So that buy-in, how do you get it from marketing early on? You said involve them, but what does that practically look like?
Sometimes it's shoving yourself in the meetings. It is. It's there's this pushback, and I really want to, rip that apart. And it's just building rapport. It's difficult. Don't get me. It's mindset. You're probably changing people's mindset. But I think if you can collaborate with an understanding, like mutual understanding, like this is a challenge for both of us, but we actually want the same thing. So, and that same thing is creating content which is engaging and at the same time compliant. If we understand that that's our goal, hopefully we can start with a conversation. We can start with then educating, and then, who knows where it goes from there.
And in that process, it's really interesting you say, so create engaging content that's compliant. How are compliance viewed with that statement or goal in mind? Do you think marketing and other teams feel you're on that mission with them, or do they see you as a blocker?
They see us as a blocker. I think they see us as quite rigid. quite archaic, like, is the word archaic?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and very rule book, very black and white,
Mm-hmm.
nothing in between sort of thing.
Which doesn't work, right? Because
It
compliance
doesn't.
is subjective.
It doesn't. I don't think I'm like that, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
but you know,
You don't come across like that. If that's helpful.
Thanks. I think SES is very like no, and already that is a problem, right? So they won't probably involve you from the beginning, or you know, want to, or just assume you're going to say no. So you know,
What have you found in your experience that works to break that wall down, to really show like we're on this mission with you, if anything?
talking, just like you know, talking to the team, understanding their challenges, I think, and educating yourself on what those challenges could be. It's very well, you know, when I started like my different companies, like I've done loads of exams before I, like during my career, and you can come into a new company and be like, Cobbs 4 says this and that and the other, and that doesn't work. It doesn't. Because they don't understand. They don't care. Let me not say they don't care. That's the wrong thing. But you know, they're not as interested. They've got their own goals. You've got your own goals. But you know, at some point, we do have the same goal. So it's about translating that into a way they understand. And the only way to do that is just to get in the room, build the rapport. You know, I'm repeating myself here, but you know, just educate yourself on the business, the team. I work across, you know, we're talking multiple channels here. We're talking digital, traditional channels. We're talking global teams. So there's not going to be, you know, it's not one for all. It's being flexible in who you're talking to. And yeah.
It's really interesting because we have obviously sort of a compliance network now and committee, and every time we speak with both compliance and then the same with marketing, something that comes out is both sides want that collaboration, and when compliance are involved early on in the process, they actually come up with, alongside the marketing, the best copy or the best ideas, because 100%. They know what 100%. Is compliant, right?
Do you know, I think the best, like, I love it when I'm invited to like meetings, because I actually love what they do, right? It's they're creative, not me. And we want to work alongside marketing, and marketers definitely want to work alongside us. Who wants to be faced with, you know, no, you can't do this after, you know, it's someone's idea, right? Like, yeah, it's
it's a difficult challenge.
It is, and it doesn't need to be.
I think ultimately both sides, it shouldn't even be sides, but as a company,
can you imagine both sides of a company?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
They want to achieve the same thing, but I think it's how you shift that psychology, the mindset, which is so difficult, which is why I think compliance teams really struggle with that, because it's no one's fault in that sense, but that's just how society or people view blockers, you know, and it's like we're on the same mission together.
And I think like marketing have constantly been evolving, because of marketing is evolving, right? Systems are evolving, the platforms they use are evolving, and maybe regulation doesn't evolve in the same way, and you know, the people that work in it don't evolve in the same pace, and marketing that view it can see that we're not moving with the times, which is why I really advocate. And it's taken, like I'm saying this, it's taken me, I've been on my own journey. I really advocate for meeting the marketing teams where they are. What are they doing? How are they doing it? Why are they doing it? To then be able to articulate, this is what we need to do.
And I think like marketing are always innovating, obviously, but so are compliance, in the way that they do new processes or automate certain parts of their role, or new issues come up they have to deal with, and they build teams and all these things. And actually we see the regulator trying to follow suit, but there's always that difficulty when you're regulating something. But you know, there's the AI lab or the digital sandbox, which try and allow for innovation, allow compliance teams and firms to leverage this innovation, which is a good thing, but it's difficult to kind of get that from the regulator, that message, that pro-growth regulation. And I think that would help the compliance marketing
100%.
division if everyone's on the same page that we need regulation, but for
Mm-hmm.
the right things, not to hamper growth, to help with growth.
Yeah, 100%. It's a mindset thing, honestly. It's a mindset thing. I think people need to be quite open and flexible for that change.
And tied to that, tell me about not financial advice.
Oh, yes, cool. So, Not Financial Advice is a forum I've helped to set up. It's been my brainchild for years, actually, where I'm part of different forums like on LinkedIn, and they call themselves like marketing compliance, but no one talks in them. And I just feel like I said, there's regulation is changing every week, and I was hoping to get help, assistance, and I think compliance we'd like to gatekeep. And I was never asking for what's your policy on this. It was more, this has come out for everyone, how are we looking at this? And tumbleweeds. And so this forum hopes to do that in a very transparent way, but then also involve marketing into the conversation. I don't think there isn't any. There's things for other areas of compliance, be it roundtables, webinars, but there's nothing specific to marketing compliance. And it's so important. Like marketing, you will never know about a company until you see a piece of their marketing, right? You'll never know about them. So it's important that we have this understanding. And so inviting marketing into the conversation is something I really, really want to do, because again, it's just about educate. I want to learn from them, and they should learn from us, but in a very open, transparent way.
And we find the best marketers do work in regulated sectors, and they want to learn. They want to create engaging content in a regulated space, because it's challenging. There's certain things you can and can't say, and how do you create new ways?
It's difficult.
So I can see why the forum would be valuable.
100%.
What are the key learnings or things that have been discussed in that forum that people have taken away and really used in their day-to-day jobs?
Can't say. You've got to be in the forum.
Okay, generally, you can anonymise it. Something a key learning, let's say.
I mean, it's just interesting how we're all going through challenges, all of us, and it's actually quite amazing how we can read something, the same thing, and kind of translate it in a different. I love that with my team, and I love that with people outside of my company. We're looking at the same thing, but it means something different to them. Or I think one, maybe not from the forum, but one amazing thing I've learned is, if you can't understand something from one area of the handbook, try and build it from another area of the handbook. And I was like, oh, I've never thought about doing that. So I'm getting some gems, and I'm hoping I'm also giving out some gems as well. I think something I shared as well is actually some of the content I listen to and the content I read, because I think outside of the handbook, outside of any regulatory news or fines or anything, there's actually what we're doing now, just hearing from other compliance professionals and how they do their day-to-day is really important.
I agree. I think when you say marketing compliance, there's it's quite a niche.
It's very
thing.
niche, yeah.
And it is niche, but it's very, I don't know the words, tangible or felt by a lot of people at different firms. So, on the outside, it might seem niche, but once you're there, it's very, very apparent what the problem is, the issues, and how we can try and overcome them, which is probably why the forum exists. Taking it back to that sort of collaboration between marketing and compliance, what does the process generally look like for marketing to get something approved with compliance? What sort of feedback is often given, or what are the kind of, not hoops, but things you have to get through on both sides?
Okay. Typically, I would say that there should be a process. There should be a policy and a process to begin with, and that policy and process should be understood. It should be signed off. It should be, it's there and it's been agreed on. So, marketing will have content. I think before it even gets to compliance, there's probably months of work and there's, at the ideation stage, someone's, let's do this, or seen something based on the market, let's do this, and then it goes through design, content, right? It goes through external, internal, proofreading, and I feel like compliance probably should have been somewhere in those stages before it got to compliance. But anyway, that typically a lot happens on the marketing side before it actually reaches compliance. But hopefully they understand the policy, they've received training, they understand that there is a process. So so compliance should receive the content. I don't know how long it takes. It depends on what the content is. Review the content, make sure, against, what is the rationale for either approving, rejecting, leaving some comments somewhere for the team, and then approve or reject based on, or, pushing it back to marketing to change, explain.
Okay. And before we get to that part where you've pushed back on something and they have to come back. It's interesting you mentioned policy and process.
Yeah.
And for process, it sounds like often, and we discussed this earlier, but often compliance aren't looped into the early stages, which means, I assume when you get that submission,
we're not looped into the early stages, but I guess what I was saying there is there should be a policy and procedure in place, right? So before anything is created, that is already there. Training has been given, so there's an understanding of regulation, the do's and don'ts, essentially. So we are there, kind of. We should be there. So that should, but then you can't be in every meeting, right? It'll be great, but compliance should be involved somehow in every stage.
It's like essentially communication and collaboration, right?
Yeah.
And if we look at it through a simple prism of good marketer, bad marketer, a good marketer will loop in compliance in that ideation stage, because what's the point of getting to that end point and then having to change? And like we said earlier, the best copy often comes from both sides, from different perspectives within the business, if you're aligned on the same mission. And that policy you mentioned, so that will involve... Well, will it involve your interpretation of the rules, let's say, and then how to apply them?
Yeah, a good policy. Listen, a good policy is not a copy and paste of the handbook. It can't be. It needs to be. You need to, and I think I've been quite lucky in that I've been a generalist compliance person, so I understand the whole business. I understand all the products, all the offering, all the services, and that should be brought together as you're writing this policy. It can't be a cookie cutter. This is how you do it. A lot of everyone's using AI at the moment, not to write policies, I hope, but start there maybe. But what do your business do? How do your business operate? Who are who are your teams? Who are you working with? And I'm repeating myself so much, but honestly, for me, it makes sense. Like, how would anyone understand something that doesn't apply to them? And I think marketing love it when they can, use case studies, right? Use things that you don't want to see based on things maybe they've done, or, this is good, this is bad, with their own copies. I think it speaks to them.
So you've just, let's say hypothetically,
hypothetically,
big question, but you've just landed at a financially regulated firm. They're fast growing. They're publishing lots of marketing materials. And when I say marketing materials, I'm talking about outbound communications. Emails, Instagram, whatever it might be. You get there and there's a loose process in place, some understanding of the rules. The marketing team want to learn, which is the critical thing, but they just don't know how to apply the rules. What are the first few things you might do to enact policy and process?
Understand the company, understand the company's mission, understand its products, its services, what the growth, like where are we going. Understand marketing teams, the different channels that we are operating in, even down to like how much money do we want to spend on each channels, like so we can determine who are the, I guess, maybe high risk, do an assessment of those channels. And then understand the people as a person, as an individual. If you can take time, take time to like talk to each and every one. Like, what are you working on this week or this month? How can I help? Or, and I try to do that a lot. Like, I do a lot of like weeklies, bi-weeklies, monthlies with certain team members or, individuals or actual teams to let me know what you're doing or what we doing, as compliance. Like, this is what's come through, FYI, or how can we help you? How can we better? Or I saw this last week. What does this mean? And it's educational. It's informative. That's how I would approach that situation.
So first step sounds like understanding holistically
Yes.
what we're all trying to do, what the business, etc.
Yeah.
And then I suppose practically to help that process, is it mostly like case study based, for example, where you'll get examples within that company of things that are compliant and not compliant, or is it like, how do you start once you get a good understanding and
you can do a compliance, if I've just come into the company, compliance should do a review of what's already gone out and build some sort of assessment of how good, how bad it is, what are the trends in what we need to undertake.
And how do you use the handbooks within that? So let's say you have these case studies, this review, and for whatever reason there's an issue with a piece of marketing, and then the rules or the policy might come from that example. Will you purposefully use the handbook language, let's say, COPS 4, or will you try and avoid that? And why?
I use it all the time, by the way. I'm not, I never say, like, definitely use it, but translate it into a way that's understood. And it's not a copy and paste word for word. You can, it's best you understand it fully first before you just start, throwing it away, throwing it out there.
The question essentially is, you have a case study, you understand the issue. How do you communicate that to marketing? Do you use handbook language, or do you try and translate that into something they'll understand?
Yeah, translate that using handbook, translate it into something they will get. Consumer duty states that we should be doing this, and I think we can do this, but have a solution. Have a solution on how we can make it. And I'm not saying compliance needs to turn into marketing. I always kind of, I give a suggestion, but I'm not gonna, start. I just say, can you come up with a different word that doesn't mean this or doesn't allude to this? I can't give the word. I don't know what that word is.
Okay, and if that policy changes, how do you track that, or how do you kind of re-educate it? Does that happen a lot, where there's an
What do you mean when the policy changes?
So let's say you have an interpretation of a rule because of this case study or this review you've done, and 6 months later, marketing have tried to enact these changes or these rules we put in place, but it's a slightly wrong interpretation of what you're trying to get across. How do you track those changes? Is there a central space or somewhere you can go back to and be like, this is what I'm talking about?
You said 6 months. It's probably a month. It's probably
Really?
less than that, and that's because everything's just evolving. Something that was in the do's and don'ts today, I may have to add more words because their brand guidelines are changing. How do we monitor? Like, compliance, one of compliance functions is to monitor marketing material, and via monitoring, you're logging, you're reporting, and you're escalating. How do you escalate? Hopefully you've got, meeting, you're not only communicating to marketing at the point of distribution of marketing material, you're having regular conversation with them after that. And it's to say, I've done my monthly review, I noticed this. I would always advocate for a phone call as opposed to an email. I've seen this, can you explain this? Or, we need to take this down because yada, yada, yada. And if it's quite, systemic, like it's a lot, I would say training, maybe, or, a document, a guideline, a quick guideline, maybe with images or, something that, just says, look, this was okay maybe last week. Unfortunately, it's no longer okay. Or we're just adding more words to things you cannot say because this has changed, or, or look what's happened in this country or with this firm. So let's, break it down. Let's do more.
And the brand guidelines, do compliance have ownership over that? And it's
they shouldn't have ownership. That brand guidelines should be a marketing or communications kind of tool. They should have oversight over it, definitely, and should be there as it is adapted over time. And I think it's useful because the first time you see, how the companies speak shouldn't be at the point that you need to, like the reviewing and approving process. It should be known at the time it's being created, I think.
And in your role, will you give regulatory feedback and brand feedback, or is it just I'm just kind of siloed and looking at the compliance stuff explicitly?
All of it. 100% all of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the same sense, I guess I'm trying to flip the scenario where marketing have guidelines and their policy and their process. And really, again, not just with the content, but with the policy, they should loop in compliance to help build that. Because if you're reviewing materials from a compliance perspective and a brand perspective, you need to understand the guidelines.
100%. And the thing with brand guidelines, I think how it works, I like, this is me speaking very general, like someone at the top is creating these guidelines and it's disseminated to all of these different teams, and then with their creative flow they're just doing stuff, and the only thing that brings them together is the language they use, right? So it's important that we are also there, because we're going to be telling different teams no, but they're like, oh, but it's in the guidelines. So why, it could cause once it's disseminated to like 100 other people, it's quite difficult to say no to 100 people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then something else you mentioned around monitoring. So what does that process look like if you have to take something down, or how do you get notified that something might be now non-compliant because a month later the interpretation's changed?
Monitoring, again, it's, you're looking at, various channels. I think the best monitoring though is just being where the customer is. So I would always advise to follow, we use Instagram and Facebook for our own person. Why are you not following your company and just to meet the customer where they're at? And that is like real-time monitoring, in my opinion. But your question was?
If you don't do that, but it sounds like that is the process. But if you're not there where your customer is, how do you get notified, or what is the process of understanding, okay, now this interpretation has changed, I need to go and look for where it might be an issue? Or is it actually, I've just seen this thing and it's an issue?
There's so many things I can talk about to that question. Regulation may change. And, if you were to ask me, how do I keep up with, the regulation?
Well, let's do that first. Okay. Let's go to that.
Well, like me personally, I'm subscribed to a whole load of, newsletters. I attend webinars. I attend in-person events. I've got my forum as well. People may want, raise things there. And I think once you understand that something's changed and you analyse that change, then you can probably go to do your monitoring, your review, I guess, on content that's about to be published, already published. That's one side. Another side is actually reviewing content from maybe the previous month, the previous week, or, periodic monitoring, right? And taking that content and understand, is it still in date? Like, is that still even relevant, or did we miss something before? And hopefully it's a different person monitoring that did the review and approval in the first place.
And does that, when we talk about monitoring and things that are live, it makes me think about third parties and externals. So how you've got you have to build policy and process with internal marketing teams, but what about when you work with affiliates and influencers and creators?
It's a whole nother podcast, isn't it? I mean,
and we've only got 3 minutes. Your hot take then.
It's difficult, and I think it's just understanding if you can build a set of guidelines for influencers, and again meeting them where they are, something that they understand. Bear in mind, they're not even part of any. They may not be have any financial education or regulatory knowledge. So really writing these guidelines in a way that could be understood. But it comes back to that education, understanding the influencer and the way they post and the way they, like, again, I've been on my own journey, but I think a good compliance, if we're talking about good and bad, like a good compliance officer will push themselves into that meeting, when they're discussing which influencer maybe to choose, and going onto their page and actually looking at their style, like how do they speak, who are their followers, what are the comments, because it's all good and well saying you need to put this risk warning on it. What if we may need to adapt it, make it shorter? What if they say it because they're actually louder than, they don't use any text? Put in text on their content, and because you still want the content to be engaging, hopefully. So, how do we work alongside what they do by understanding what they do and how they do it?
And final question.
Yes.
What bit of advice would you give to someone starting out in compliance at a financially regulated firm?
Okay, I feel like I'm again repeat myself, but if I was starting out in a regulatory firm, I would first of all forget what I know. Forget everything you've learned, just maybe a month, and absorb yourself into the company, what they do, how they do it. Sit with the sales guys, sit with legal, sit with finance, understand the different ins and outs of the company, the products we offer, the services we offer. Because when you get down to the marketing content, you want to understand it like, your retail client will understand it. So forget what you know for a second, understand the company, because you need to be proactive. It's not about saying no, it's about saying no, but let's try it this way, or no, but have you considered this? And that is based on both your regulatory understanding and learning and all the exams you may have taken before you've got into the company, and what you know of your company.
And I think that first bit around just forgetting what you know and absorbing everything is applicable across different teams for any
100%.
for any new joiner.
100%.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on the pod, Stacey. I feel like we could have had another pod on a number of issues, but we've covered ground. So any final thing you'd like to say?
What is your view of compliance?
Our view of compliance is they have 1,000,001 things to do and not enough time to do it. And our view of marketing is they have a really tough job of creative content in regulated spaces. So we're trying to bridge that gap.
Okay, cool.